bigger word. That's like mayonnaise. I'm sure that's a bigger word. I know.
Hello, everybody, and welcome on into Cover 2, College Football Player Props for Week 11, powered by Unabated. I'm Thomas Viola, and he's the realist, Chris Kay, and welcome on into the show. Thank you all for being here with us for another fantastic week of college football. Chris, I can't believe we're already on Week 11.
Yeah, double digits, it really hits. It's becomes very serious double digits, but we still have like 6 or 7 weeks to go. So we've got a lot of time together. Still going for the next couple months, but yeah, it's wild. And like the injuries are piling up. There's a lot of teams this week that were just, I was waiting forever to do them. I'm a Virginia Tech fan. It's like the first team I do every week, and couldn't touch them. Didn't even do it till today. So even then there's some crazy injuries, but it's good. I mean, everybody's getting banged up. I think ourselves included, but we're here to finish strong.
You know, you reminded me of something there. You reminded me of something that we did not talk about on last week's show, and I feel we have to address it here this week, my friend. Virginia Tech. How'd they do last week?
Disappointment. They Drones and Tootin were both out, and I was like, oh, we're toast. I think I even messaged it in like the Discord. I was like, if they're really out, then like there's no way we win. And then sure enough, we come out hot. We're looking great. Up, I think 18.5, and then crumbles. And another just poor coaching, and Syracuse takes advantage of it. And you guys got some really fun, good players. So I don't mind. Like, when you start doing this stuff so much, I obviously love Virginia Tech and I want them to win every game, but like fandom is just different now than it was 10 years ago because of just the props and what I'm rooting for and things that I'm rooting for, just for the subs that have tailed, followed, whatever you want to call it, educationally betted it themselves. So Syracuse has a fun team, but it's disappointing to lose that way.
I mean, the cardiac Cuse did strike again. I'm interested in what happens next season because, like you said, we have a lot of fun players, but like we lose Kyle McCord next season. Who are we bringing in to replace him at quarterback? All that good stuff. But for Fran Brown's first year, like, the Stanford loss was disappointing. The Pitt loss was just, we didn't show up. But to be 6-2,
dude, you got to be super happy about it.
Yeah.
I mean, going into the year, you pretty much, you would have thought 6-6 was probably a good first year. Fran Brown's a great recruiter. We've seen it. And he's actually like put stuff on the field. That was like the big question mark, was like, how is he like as a game coach? Because the hire was kind of out of nowhere. And he's from Georgia. He was a positional coach, I think, but impressive first year. Does LaQuinn Allen stay? Does Aronde Gadsden stay? McCord's gone. So like, what does this backup look like? So yeah, it'll be an interesting year, but I mean, if anything, he's shown to produce.
Yeah, it's exciting times for Syracuse football, which is really something that we haven't been able to say a lot over the last several years. Last piece of housekeeping updates before we get into the show. I am committing right now, Chris. I will. My run as Liberty Flames offensive coordinator will include beating Bama by the time we meet on next week's show. I still have not been able to do it yet.
You still are on the game one.
I'm like, some people might be like, oh, why aren't you just taking the L and moving on? Like, I'm not playing this dynasty like a season thing of, okay, well, we'll just go through like this particular game. I'm treating like a boss battle. Like, you have to progress in the story. You have to beat the boss.
So if you lose week 2, you're going to be fine with it, but you're just not losing to Bama.
Exactly. Like I have to start off by doing this, and then everything else, it'll be all right. We move through and we start going to dynasty mode.
There you go.
But this one, I'm determined to eventually win. I figured out the strategy. You can blitz them a lot, and you can, like, as long as you play the nickel corner and you're able to cover the guy and you don't blow your assignment, you can blitz them. And then I'm running the ball, running it a lot, and I'm using chew clock. I'm trying to make it like a 3-possession game. I want a kick.
Game.
Yeah, I want to kick, get Bama to get a stop, take most of the rest of the first half to score a touchdown, get the ball back for the second half, take enough time to get a 14-0 lead, and just not leave them enough time to win the game.
It sounds like it's working well so far for you.
Look, I came so close the other day. I lost in the last minute. I was so angry at myself. But we've got some very much real-world college football to get to. And where do you want to start off, Chris? By the way, welcome on in, everybody. Brett Pagney, Clash's Pride, both in the chat here already saying, let's go. It's another great week of bets to make. And yeah, let's get right to it here. Where do you want to head first, my friend? I know this week on the slate we got an interesting slate. Like a lot of games to talk about, but a few players in each game.
Yeah, I think this week with the injuries and stuff, it's kind of impacted some of the different player rates, and I think there's some that definitely want to pinpoint. One of those that's not necessarily one of those situations is Iowa. So if we want to take a look at the Hawkeyes, so I think we're looking at 5 or 6 Friday teams, and then about 5 or 6 Saturday teams. So we got Brendan Sullivan, quarterback. This number to me is just too low. I think they're basing it off of what they saw last week, which was 85% run in a blowout against Wisconsin where they killed them. This UCLA spread's only like 5 or 6 points where they're the favorite. And, Sullivan's a very capable passer. 70 yards on like 10 attempts. The week before he came in relief of McNamara. I think when McNamara got hurt, he only threw it 13 times. So I think there's a level of like the books just are seeing him as like they're only going to run it. They're only going to pass it 10 to 15 times. And that's just not the case. So it's really hard to project them anything over like 70% run in a tight game. So I like the over here on Brendan Sullivan. I'd probably stop at about a 145 or so, but to me, this number feels really good. And if you want to say, hey, I think you're completely wrong, Chris, let's go to the rushing yards. Because if this is wrong, then I think you have to make the Caleb Johnson bet. 8.4% edge over 120, which is shocking. Didn't come into the season as the starter, but then very much is one of the top college fantasy football running backs in the country. If GT wasn't GT, we would probably be talking about Caleb Johnson a little bit more. So I think both of them are fine bets. If you think the Sullivan bet is bad and you think I'm an idiot, which is totally fair, then I think you definitely have to hit the Caleb Johnson bet, because I think that means they run more. And then I think he's going to be way more successful. 20 to 25 carries would be like almost like floor for him. If you think Sullivan can't hit the 131.
GP36 pointing out here that Caleb did get steamed down about 8 yards, 7 at FanDuel here just about an hour ago.
Yeah, that 128 is a little aggressive. And standalone, I don't love the bet. I like the bet. Hence the 8% edge feels appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen anything that has reason to steam it down. So I'm curious, maybe there's a couple wise people out there that are trying to go under it.
It's still wild seeing a rushing yards number at 120.
It is. But GT's kind of normalized it a little bit, but his number's at like 195. We're releasing Boise. You'll see that one later. But yeah, so I think the Sullivan over is really good, and I think the Caleb Johnson numbers is good. If you hate me for the Sullivan one, then I think you should hammer the Caleb one. I also think there's some receiver questions and injuries. Reese Vanderzee is out, the true freshman receiver, and then also Luke Lachey, the starting tight end, is out, which to me means Zach Ortworth. He is the tight end that's going to be replacing him. He saw, I think, 4 of the 10 targets last week. If you think that the Sullivan over is a good play, over 21.5 to me is really, really good. We kind of went a little conservative on the number because they use some different tight ends, but Ortworth should 100% be the guy. And so at over 21.5, it feels really good. This is not your typical Big Ten tight end. Iowa produces tight end overs. I mean, the amount of overs on Ostrenga and Lachey before he got hurt last year that we won on was a really good run for us. So I like that one specifically. I'd avoid that Caleb Johnson under, and then there's not really anything else to look at because they have some injuries at receiver and starting tight end.
Mm-hmm. All right, next game that you want to roll to here. What are we looking at?
Let's stay at UCLA. Let's kick it over to the passing yards to start. Ethan Garbers. Yeah, we do like an under. I was going to say we like every under on the receivers, so I would hope we like the under on the Garbers pass line. 234.5 is pretty good. I mean, that's like a pretty high number. We're talking about Sullivan at 136, 130. Some of these other Big Ten quarterbacks are in the 150s, 160s. So like 234 is pretty high. Going up against an Iowa defense that is really good. Defense travels, so not something I'd be concerned about there. So going east to west coast doesn't bother me there. This is an Iowa defense that, like last week, we really liked the Braden Locke Wisconsin quarterback pass under. And Locke had been really good on like some pretty decent volume, but his under 199 hit pretty easily against Iowa's defense. So I think Garbers is in for a tough matchup, and the number is just pretty steep. Like I said, 234 is fairly high for a Big Ten number. We're talking about like Carson Beck later. He's going to throw it 40 plus times, and his number is like 268. It's not that much higher, and his matchup is better. So I like the Garbers under, and then subsequently, I think if you would go to receiving yards, you could pick your poison. The disclaimer I would put here is there's been injuries in the receiving room that has made it murky to say, like, we feel confident in every single one. We like every single under except for Logan Loya, whose number I think is the lowest of all of them. Mm-hmm. Loya's the experienced white slot guy type. He's been banged up, but he's looked good when he's been available. This Quasi Gilmore, this Titus gentleman, these are guys that are seeing the random spike of like 4 or 5 targets and then seeing a bunch of 1 and 2 targets. I would look at this game and say, what are the 1 or 2 that I really like, and go with it. I wouldn't attack all 4. And even like the Harden one is really interesting. He's in a committee of running backs, and I just think that you could target 1 or 2 of these unders and go with it. But I wouldn't go all 4 or all 3, because I think one of them hits. It's just matter of who gets the 5 target day, which is tough. So just look into it and see what you think. I think all the unders, though, make sense for those 3.
Did you say Logan Loya is the white slot type?
Oh, yeah, he's the white slot type.
Dude, come on. It's 2024. You can't say that. You got to say he's a scrappy gym rat.
No.
There's
nothing
First
scrappy
in, last
about him.
out.
He's just your typical slot guy. He's short, stout.
He's shifty.
He's shifty. Yeah, he's athletic. Or surprisingly athletic. I'm sorry.
Yeah, surprisingly athletic. GP36 asks, any thoughts on Garber under 37.5 yards longest pass? Lines up with your commentary, seems high to me. I mean, you're playing a volatile market there. It's not something that we normally look at because it's very tough to handicap something like that.
Yeah, I'm not even sure the best way to look at that. I would say 234 and a 37.5. It does feel a little high. But some of these receivers are just kind of just your typical like long play type guys. I haven't watched a ton of UCLA to be able to say like definitively one way or the other on some of these guys. I will say one thing that's helpful just towards the receiver unders is Rico Flores is questionable. He's kind of at that 4-game mark where does he not play again because he's been banged up and they want to preserve a red shirt, or do they not care about it? So there's a possibility that we get another receiver added to the mix, which makes it really nice for those unders.
Yeah.
But if Rico Flores plays at that 37.5 is really difficult because Flores is the best receiver of the bunch. And I think he's gone like 3 for 100 in a game so far this year, early on against Hawaii. So I think I'd avoid the 37.5. Those are there's too many edges that I think are really good to, if you're hamstrung on options, maybe, but otherwise I typically wouldn't consider that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, do we want to go to the UCLA rushing market, or are we looking to another game here?
The committee of, I don't think there's really anything that pops on the rushing stuff there. Let's go to Danny O'Neill and San Diego State. They play tonight as well. They play the late night against New Mexico. We like the under on Danny O'Neill. There's a couple things that come into play. He's been banged up more recently. The matchup is good. New Mexico does give up points, and it could be a high-scoring game. We like the rushing stuff more in this offense. One thing that goes against him is Jayshon Polk. We're assuming out. He's their receiver, kind of pseudo receiver 1. At the very least, he's the receiver 2. We're assuming him out. He got hurt in that last game, and there's been nothing reported on him other than if you watch the game, you saw him take a hit that looked pretty gruesome, whether it's concussion or lower body. Haven't heard anything on if he's going to play or not. So we're assuming he's out. So if you want to look maybe at the receiving yards, we like the Danny O'Neill under. He's a true freshman, good style of offense, but he's probably a year away from really being able to execute it. Mm-hmm. And then Napier, we saw him benefit from that poke injury last week. Not really anything here to work with, but so I think really just the Danny O'Neill's. What's the important one to look at here? We could look at the rushing yards. Marquez Cooper. I mean,
before we go to rushing yards, though, on the other side for New Mexico, Ryan Davis looks like you got a little bit of an edge on the under at Prize Picks here.
We do. There's a little bit of, we like the under, which is nice because there are some question marks on like Luke Wysong if he plays, and Trujillo and Caleb Medford. These are guys that are questionable. So I think there is a way for Ryan Davis to hit that under pretty nicely. I mean, if these guys play, then it's an even stronger edge. we don't really know anything. Like the amount of info that comes out of there is just bafflingly zero. If you want to go to rushing, there maybe my favorite play of the night, which has been ruined because a buddy of mine just went rogue. No conversation with me about it. No insight. He's just a smart guy. He's actually local. We've hung out. Look at Eli Sanders. Click on his FanDuel number. This thing was around 55.
Jesus.
It jumped today because he posted about it. It makes complete sense to me. The one thing I did get out of New Mexico was I read some article. I tweeted a guy that wrote it and said, hey, love the article. Thanks for the information on the turf. What are their status on two running backs? So Javen Jacobs and Nakari Rogers are their kind of RB2, RB3, and Jacobs plays a little bit of the slot type receiver, not your Logan Loya type. And it sounds like Jacobs is out and Rogers is questionable. So we love Eli Sanders in this matchup. I think like you could probably bet him in over 80. Like I think this is a really good bet. He went for like 200 and a couple of touchdowns his last game. This could be a two-man game between him and Devin Dampier. And if those two other running backs are out, the only other guy is your typical four-string running back, nothing super impressive. I would imagine they would just hammer Sanders a bunch in this one. If all that information we've got is true. So I like the over here significantly.
Yeah. And I mean, hey, usage is what makes the world go round, especially in college football here. So there you go. That's one to really look at. Do we want to look at where next?
Yeah. So where next? What else is tonight? Memphis. We'll go Memphis. Memphis is one of those teams that like I really want to look at one player, their quarterback, their Seth Hennigan. I think the over on him is really nice. It's not going to pop as a huge edge, but Memphis came into the season as one of those like big time favorites is to be that G5 contender for the playoff.
The FanDuel number just moved to 71.
Nice. Love seeing that. And they've been underwhelming, but Seth Hennigan's really stepped up in 2 of the last 3 games. He's gone crazy. He threw for like 450 last week against UTSA. We talked about it on the show, which was fun to see happen. The reason why we can't really look at anything else is Demir Blankenship. Did you see Demir Blankenship, the Memphis receiver last week?
I did not.
He scored a touchdown, long touchdown, and he did he tried to do the Ronaldo celebration.
Oh no!
And his leg, like his knee/leg, gave out. It was gross.
Oh.
So we're assuming him in because he is on the depth chart. He did come back for a couple of plays. Did not see a pass thrown his way. So I can't recommend any of these unders because we have no idea if he's going to play or not. We have him assuming in. But all that to say is like for Hennigan, he has a ton of options in the passing game. Mario Anderson's great in the passing game. Rock Taylor is great in the passing game, obviously receiver 1. And Lamphere's their tight end. But like, I think the Hennigan over is really good. I think that number might be a little bit lower just because of the fact that they're worried about an injury to Blankenship and the receiver core being a little thin. So only like a 5.5% edge on Hennigan, but I think the over is probably more of like a 10 to 15% edge.
Worth looking at the injury market and keeping up with that news as well.
Yeah, if Blankenship is out, I think the direct benefit here is Rock Taylor. That number feels like it's moved, to be quite honest, but I think it's a little bit aggressive, but you could go over if Blankenship's out. He could see easily 10 to 14 targets in this one. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And Rice is not your best type of defense, so it's not like you're going up against an Iowa or something like that.
Yeah. All right, continuing our tour around college football for the night. Where shall we head next, sir?
Let's look at Ohio State. Ohio State was a tough one. They're like 38-point favorites.
Chris. The Ohio State.
No, I don't do that. That's silliness right there. I don't touch the blowout here. The spread's like 37.5. Will Howard, good. Nice passer, nothing insane. He's more good because his receivers are great. Yeah. But this 279 or 276 on like FanDuel is just a bit high for a game that he could just be handing it off in the second quarter, third quarter. So I think there's 2 kind of routes you could go here. I think the plays that we're going to show here, the 3 edges we're going to show are all good edges to bet. If you have a lean on one way or the other, maybe you spend up a little bit more. And I would say the rushing yards is where I would target. We have accounted for blowouts. So we have, I think it's like 90% attempts for Howard and 10% for the backup.
Mhm.
We have the running backs I feel pretty good on. It's so hard to say with this blowout. That's why we're not syncing it to the subscribers today. But if you think they go crazy in the pass game, then I think this Henderson and Judkins unders are both legitimate. If you think that they just dominate the ground game, then I would think that the Howard is legitimate. Either way, I think all three of them are good bets, right around that 5% edge type mark. But there's a little bit of volatility because they are playing Purdue, who is awful and not going to keep it close. And subsequently, Ohio State's going to score a bunch of points, which means typically a bunch of yards.
Yeah. And I mean, my only question for you there is when it comes to the backups and like you have a blowout potential. Do we see the backups in by the fourth quarter?
Exactly. Right. And even you could extend it to like, do we see the backups kind of rotate in earlier, right? If it's 21-0 in the second quarter, Ohio State's defense is incredible. They could score a pick six, and it wouldn't surprise me, right? They could put in James Peoples, their third running back, in the second quarter just every now and then here we go. We're starting to take away snaps from Judkins and Henderson, who, by all accounts, have not looked good running the football this year. They've looked better, against Penn State. They looked better, but even then, on the whole, I think everybody would be unimpressed with their stat lines. So 65.5 or whatever, 70.5 for Henderson, 86.5. Those are pretty big numbers. A blowout. These are just tough to project and pretty volatile, but I like the unders in this situations like this.
Brett Pagney saying he hopes they do because he's playing the Ohio State defense / special teams tomorrow in college football fantasy. He's hoping for that pick six.
I wouldn't surprise me. We're releasing Purdue. There's a little bit of slight risk we mentioned in the notes, but we like a couple overs on the Purdue numbers. They just priced them so low, it's hard not to. And they had some injuries that I think the books aren't accounting for. And so kind of gives us some spots. We'll see what happens. But yeah, this wouldn't surprise me at all if Card gets a little bit crazy, throws a pick six. Agbuka is great in the return game. I think Jeremiah Smith returns some punts here and there. And both are great ways to shorten the game for some of these starters.
Jim Robinson asking real quick to see the projections for Ohio State wide receivers again. So I'll throw those up on the board.
These are tight. Tight. I would just say typically what we do in for blowouts is we don't really limit the receivers in terms of like lowering or docking their usage. Maybe instead of rounding up, we round down type of thing. But what you typically see in a blowout is they score to get the blowout and then they just run the football, right? So those, Tate, Agbuka, Smith, these guys are going to be out of the game by the time, Devin Brown, backup quarterback's going to be in. They're going to be running it more. So these are ones I would avoid. I mean, if you want to get risky and you want to just play for a big play, like Cardinal Tate is a one play type guy. Agbuka typically needs 3 to 4 targets and would need a little bit of love on that. But Jeremiah Smith is a big play guy. I would avoid him personally, but you can take a look.
Xavier 82 Jacob asks, how volatile are the college football player props? Never found success betting them. Monitor your plays. I mean, I feel like we've been pretty good with the college football plays, and I feel like it hasn't been some of these, especially when we get to blowout scenarios. I feel like a lot of these games are a little more predictable in the NFL, where you do get your shocking upsets every so often, but it's not like the NFL where you routinely see 10-point favorites going out and losing on Saturday.
I largely agree with that. I think if someone's new or wants to take a look at our projections and props and is asking, like, give me just like the quick 2 or 3 tips and pointers. I think someone asked me that last week and I said, avoid anything under 5% edges, like 99% of the time. Receiving unders are typically the best in terms of yardage performing, and then unders in general have been performing better. Receptions, if you can get lines on receptions, those are going to be your least volatile of the group, just because target rates, especially at like week 11, we've seen 8 to 9 games of these guys, and usage is typically pretty on there. The nuances though, right? If you want to get a little bit more into the nuances of it, like when you see these lines of like 20.5 yards, 17.5 yards, those are going to be way more volatile than a Agbuka at 70.5. because we're talking about Igbokwe getting 7-8 targets compared to Logan Loya, who could see 2 or 3 targets, or like a backup tight end who's going to get 1 target, right? So the lower the number, likely the more volatile it is because the target usage is going to be so low. So, I think we're going to release projection results, updated projection results this afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Take a look. That'll be on Twitter. That'll be in the Discord. That'll be on X. I'm sorry. That'll be on Discord. And what you'll see is we bump back up, having success the last couple of weeks. And a lot of it is just based on, unders, receiving yard unders, and avoiding some of those like Khalil Mulling's 1.5 receiving yards. Like, you're literally just hoping he doesn't catch the pass he's thrown, or that they don't throw him one football. Like, if they throw him the football, he's likely going to get that. So those are just becoming very volatile in that scenario.
Yeah. Wow. Justin, give me a thumbs up if this is correct. Are we at 1390 on the subscriber goal here? I saw we were 1380 a few minutes ago. Let's go. Getting the extra subscribers in. We absolutely love to see it. Be sure to hit that number. Let's get it to 1400 today. Let's absolutely get it there. Chris, been a great one so far.
It's the fact that we have a name of the name of the show.
Definitely.
It's just the fact that we have a name, and then that the name is so good. I think that's why.
Absolutely. Brett Pagney saying Miller Moss to Michigan transfer portal rumor surfacing.
Sure. I saw that too. I think that's like some random USC account just doing it. Although I will say, when I read it, I was like, that makes sense. I grew up a Michigan fan. I don't have any trust in Sherrone Moore's decision-making at this point. I need to see it before I believe it. And I think Miller Moss would be a good ad. He's benched, but I mean, for Michigan, he'd be night and day better than what they have at quarterback.
All right. Where do we want to head to next, good sir?
Let's look at another quick one with Rutgers. I'm sorry. I
there you go.
Telling myself in the morning I got to do better on that one. We could stay right here. If you're watching, look at just one specific play here, KJ Duff. I don't personally know why that FanDuel put a lineup of 35.5. He's basically not played this season, except for like the last 4 or 5 weeks, and he's like been very limited. Let me read you his targets. And I saw the name, and sometimes you're like, wait a second, like there's a line for him. KJ Duff. So this could be a little volatile because he has some randomness, but this whole season is 1, 2, 1, 2, 7, 1, 4, 7. Those are his targets in 10 games, 8 games. So, I mean, we're talking just up and down, very likelihood of a not going to be seen more than 2 targets. I like this play. I think it's definitely worth mentioning, obviously. I even looked at like why the 7 targets in those 2 games? No rhyme or reason. It wasn't like in blowouts he gets the action. It wasn't like in tight games he gets the action. They've had some injuries. Ian Strong is questionable. I haven't heard if he's going to play or not. If he were to play, even better. But they have 4 or 5 different guys that are going to be mixed in at receiver. And Dymere Miller, who you see here, we have 51.9 yards. He saw 20 targets last game. Jeez. So like, we're crazy. So like, I just don't know why that number is up personally. I would say that's probably good to like 27, 26.5 type number. Mm-hmm. Then you probably want to stay away because 2 targets could be 26 yards, and that wouldn't be the most unrealistic thing ever. But yeah, I think the under on Duff here is the play for Rutgers.
All right, a couple questions coming in.
Sure.
Chris, which current college football player do you think will be the best pro sports videos? I mean, is the answer on Colorado? I mean,
Travis Hunter. You wonder what are they going to do with Travis Hunter in the pros? Like, is he going to specialize in offense?
I think my problem with that is that he's a better corner than receiver, but the money's at receiver, and I think that's where he's going to play in the pros.
I would agree with that. That's why I lean not necessarily mentioning him. I've come on way more to GT. Obviously, he's had an insane year. He just looks the part way more than he did last year, which is kind of crazy to think about. He had a good 2023. The guy that has surprised me the most, Cam Ward. Yeah. I mean, to me, if I'm drafting a quarterback, it's Nussmeier or Ward. And I think if you're debating those two, I think you kind of have to go with Ward. I mean, the guy's been incredible.
It's not Sanders.
In every single matchup.
What do you think about Sanders?
Nah, I'm not there on Sanders. I'm not there on Sanders. He's probably the third quarterback I'd like behind Nussmeier. I've always just been a Nussmeier fan personally, but not Shador. It's just a lot, man. It's just a lot when you're Deion's kid and just the stuff that's gone on. When you're a quarterback in the NFL, that's not the prima donna position. Receiver is the prima donna position. Corner's the, Travis Hunter can get away with anything because he's so talented and he plays a position that's perfect for it. But quarterback is just a little bit different than receiver cornerback.
How about the Crane asks, will we be releasing Diego Pavia props? Can the models quantify his greatness?
There's no quantifying his greatness. It's off the charts. We don't have Vanderbilt released. If you're in the Discord, you can Slack me. You can Discord message in CFB Alpha Chat, and I'll try my best to tell you what we got cooking for him this weekend. Vanderbilt is just literally just run him and Cedric Anderson or Alexander for like 15 carries each for like 3 yards apiece, but they still crank out wins. It's pretty awesome.
Diego under rushing. I'm not into the whole South Carolina thing.
South Carolina, the hard part there is the Gamecocks defensive line is incredible. Like we're talking like the next potential Jadeveon Clowney type guy is at Carolina, coincidentally. He's been incredible.
That's the important thing about this Cox team. They're strong at the base. That's important. That's really important.
You have to up front. You have to be strong there. Yeah.
Yep. Chris, looks like you're projecting approximately 10 college football fantasy points for Daniel Jackson using 0.5 PPR.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, they're not going to throw a ton of passing touchdowns. Brasmer. We can look at Minnesota here in a second, but like he is a PPR monster. He's going to get 8 to 10 targets, like volume type guy, but. He's not going to hit he could hit a huge yardage, but I think the problem with him is more the touchdowns. He's going to be a little bit limited when they get close to the red zone. It's Darius Taylor all day, every day.
Chad Martin pointing out Duff is now down to 27.5 yards.
There we are. Well, and we still like the 8.5% edge. I'm not saying keep going with it. You could if you wanted to, but I think to me, that's where it becomes, okay, well, look, I love the play and now I like the play. Speaking to Minnesota here, they have started to throw the ball a lot more recently. Darius Taylor's healthy-ish. Like he keeps getting banged up every single game. I think I put in the notes, like if you're going to bet on it, I think we like the under anyways on Darius Taylor, but like if you were to bet an over, just 50-50, he sits out like 4 series because he just gets banged up every single game. But they've been passing it. Elijah Spencer has seen significant targets the last couple of weeks. And he's always been their receiver too. So I like the over there. More obviously on like the DFS sites compared to, FanDuel where we have it at 37.5, different than 33.5. If you want to go to the passing yards, Brosmer is a really nice over. He's 212, I think, on FanDuel.
Yep.
And, Rutgers is banged up. They might not have Kyle Monungai. It could be like, and for Big Ten terms, could be a Big Ten shootout, 28-27, which is, I think, qualifies for that. And Brosmer is looked very capable as a passer, so I don't mind the 212 line there. And the volume will surely be much better than like a Brendan Sullivan, whose line is obviously about 80 yards short. So I think the passing game there is one to look at.
Brett Pagney is asking, are you thinking that they will be ordering up some cream of Monungai this week?
I like to think that I'm pretty good with puns, and that's really good. I can't believe I haven't even thought of that one. But that's a good one, Brett. I like that.
It's right there. I saw it. Brett was actually asking, "Do you think he plays?" But I mean,
I think he did. Oh, I have to give the credit to you. I take it back. I think he does play, but it is questionable. The whole team has been banged up. It's truly unfortunate because they were on such a good ride there at the beginning of the season. Now they're just struggling. Now it's just become a little bit messy. Injuries everywhere, and so hopefully he's healthy. But we'll have to wait till tomorrow to find out. Let's look at the rush yards real quick. Curious what we have for Darius Taylor. I'm fairly positive. Yep, it's an under. It's only a DFS site there with Prize Picks, but 102.5. Man, that's just a steep number. That's a big number. You have to be very good and get sure-handed volume, like a Caleb Jackson, like a G&T, like a Dylan Sampson. These guys are electric and get volume. Taylor gets banged up too much. He surely is going to, if you were to bet it over, he's surely going to like get hit and then like limp to the sideline, and then you're just wondering if he comes back. This is why the unders are always a little bit more fun to bet, because you don't get screwed over on blowouts or on injuries. So,
yeah, I mean, we say it all the time. It's a lot easier to bet on things not to happen than to bet on things to happen, and that's why we do love betting unders. Same thing goes for NBA. If you're an unabated NBA member, if you're not, you should probably check them out, because the unabated NBA team has been doing some great work, and you'll get access to Set the Screen, their live stream coming up at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, right after NFL Week 10 player props with Derek Carty, which is coming up right after this at the top of the hour.
Yeah, it's informative. I think it's helpful to hear from the horse's mouth, right? Like, why do they think certain things? What's the context of the situation has been super helpful. I think like if you were to just bet just the college football props here without any, like on this show, without any context, you probably would be 500. But if you were to listen to the conversation and say, avoid this one because of an injury, but play this one, you're probably closer to 60 to 65% win percentage. I have no data behind that. So if you want to go back and watch every single stream, please go ahead and boost those numbers. But anecdotally, I personally like hearing like how the sausage is made and like why situations matter. So especially in NBA, I mean, NBA situations are insane. 82 games, the load management and stuff like that, it gets crazy. But a huge benefit if you spend the time on it.
And it just helps, like doing stuff like this. It's made me a better NBA better. It's made me a better college football better, being on the show with you, like being able to start discerning, okay, well, this is why this situation is the way it is, rather than just blindly betting the props. It really does help.
Yep. I think we have a few teams left. So if you guys have questions, hit me for sure. Let's go to Virginia. This game to me is one that could see passing yards, if you don't mind. We could see both these quarterbacks benched. We're not releasing Holstein here in Pitt. Just did not feel like trying to tackle that one, because Holstein he's the Pitt quarterback, does not look 100%. And the backup has come in and looked good. Specifically, though, with Anthony Calandria, true gunslinger, true sophomore, good quarterback, but he's just like turned awful in the last 6 games. 5.8 yards per attempt in his last 6-8 games. We have them projected for somewhere around 6.5. I know we only see it on DFS site. So my comment to you would be, write this down, pay attention to see if somebody pops up a number on Calandria, because 240 is high. He hasn't broken 200 but twice maybe in the last 6 games, and now you have to put another 40 on top of it. The receiving core is banged up, a lot of questionable guys there, and the worst part about all this for him, Tony Muskett, the backup, has come in and looked great. In 2 blowouts, they take him out of the game, they put in Muskett, and he's like 15 for 18 for like $150, like blowout time. But this staff loves Muskett for some reason. I could see Calandria pulled at half. Like, would not shock me at all.
Caesars has 238.5 at -123.
Good. I mean, because he could be pulled, you could, I don't want to say you could play almost any number, but like you could play that number to like 220, 215, and I would feel pretty fine about it. We have him at the 220 at 100% of usage. So we haven't accounted for any sort of pull or blowout or anything like that. And we're a little bit high on his more recent yards per attempt. So some room to even go lower than 240.
Hey, that's always good to see. All right. Do we want to stick with this game? Because we've got a couple that we've been looking at.
Is there Kobe Pace rushing yards? Is there anything on that besides Prize Picks?
Let's find out.
No,
but that doesn't mean that there isn't a line at Caesars. Let me look it up for you.
So this number to me feels good. He will end around 40 yards. Like, it's just going to happen. They use running back by committee. He's more of your ground and pound versus like Xavier Brown, who's more of their speed type running back. He's going to split carries amongst them. They could get pass heavy against Pitt playing from behind. I think the under on this, if you can get a number, anything, 49.5. I would say, if it stays around 45, 46, I think that under is good. If it gets closer to that 40 number, then I would avoid it. But I think if it's available, if it pops up in the next 24 hours, I think that's a worthy bet and under there.
Calandria is now down to -131. Speaking of the rushing number there, and nope, I just lost that game. That's unfortunate. The rushing number on Caesars is 46.5 at -123.
Good, not great, but good bet. Good edge. Probably would be closer to like 5, 6, 7% edge. But I like it. I mean, you diversify. You get it. I like to when we do these. I'm like, Ben, we got to get this. Like, we got to get a night game in. We got to get some night games in. Nothing worse than like some tough luck on the noon slate, but then you have the 3:30, the 8, the 11, whatever.
Yeah, you want someone to save you.
Yeah, and we want to spread it out a little bit, right? You want maybe you got to do stuff with the kids or the wife or what have you at noon, but give you some action at night. So when the kids are down, so 8 p.m. I like it. I wouldn't hammer it or anything like that, but I like it. Hopefully, it pops up on some other stuff for us.
Brett is asking. He's scared Tootin may not play, and if he does, he won't be 100%. Are you rooting for Tootin?
I always root for Toot. That's a hard one because there's a difference between Drones and Schlee. So if Drones is the quarterback, he's going to run it 8 to 12 times. If it's Schlee, he's going to run it 12 to 18 times, as we saw, right? He is like sacrifice his body type, kind of like a college version of Josh Allen, who just like never has learned how to slide. So you're going to see a heavier rush volume on Schlee than with Drones. But then also, like, I think Toot was just very good. It looked like he was close to playing, but they just wanted to be careful. Bummer. The Clemson game, I wonder if there was a little bit of like, let's sit him because we think we can win without him, and then we have him full strength. They're closer to it for Clemson, the bigger matchup, technically speaking. Didn't work out. I would be wary of that. There are some Malachi Thomas lines out there, which is the backup running back. So that's an interesting one. If you think Tootin plays, you could technically throw some money on the under on Malachi Thomas. I know at Underdog, he was 30.5 rushing yards in the first half. So if Tootin plays, that'd be pretty hard to get to 30.5 yards for Malachi Thomas. So just keep that in mind as well.
Joe 748 talking about why is the suggested threshold 5% for NFL versus what usually here 10 to 20? I mean, part of it is you guys like the projections that are handcrafted for NBA and college football, WNBA. You can go a little bit lower on them because like we're just it's something built by Unabated, and it's just a little bit sharper in the system. That's what I feel like. But you talk about it too, Chris.
It's hard to say. I don't know the math behind all of it. I know for college football speaking, there's just edges that are unavoidable. There's so many players I have to give usage to. Like Ohio State's a good example. I want to make sure I'm nailing the top 3 guys, right? But then like if I start to get tricky and move percentages around, then all of a sudden we're going to see an over pop on Travion Henderson or something. So there are just so many players available that lines will come out for. Like, why does KJ Duff have a line? Even if he's their second or third receiver for records, like, why is there a KJ Duff line? Nobody's heard of this gentleman. So like, why? But that's how it goes. I was looking at results for the past week. It was like 55, maybe 60 total edges and like 45, let's say, were positive. There were 7 or 8 edges that were under 1%, and they went 1 and 7. It's unavoidable. I can't tell you the exact reason why. Just trust me. I'm the parent. Just because I said so. Sometimes, there's so many edges between 5 and 30% that you're going to get. Why would you play around with a 2% edge? Unless you have a personal need. If you have something yourself, go for it.
Mm-hmm. He's also more so talking about the difference of going down to 5% for college versus playing 10 to 20 in the NFL. The NFL is a much more efficient system.
That's probably it, right? NFL, there's tons of info out there. There's there's injury statuses. There's 0 question marks across the board, more consistent usage, things like that, which make it say, okay, well, like we really need to find something that's closer to that 10% to make it make sense compared to like a 5%, which is different, right? Do you see 35 and 40% edges on a 55 rushing yard number in the NFL?
I mean, not
Rarely.
quite that. Yeah, I see a lot of like when I'm using the blitz with Derek, I'll see some 10 to 20 and like, Sports Video saying Cardi's projections always give crazy edges, which they do. Like, we don't play passing yards in the NFL that are under 40%. Some of it is sports betting isn't black and white. There's a ton of gray areas. Mess around, find what works for you. Some of it is also, I personally think when it comes to the projections that we put up here at Unabated, I feel like our system is better at quantifying them versus when you put somebody else's numbers into them. Like I feel like that's just how I feel it goes. I feel like you have a sharper quantification of the edge, but
I think I think you're fair there because like certain projections are made certain ways, right? Like if you make your projection to the median, right, or what have you, it's different than like how somebody makes it, right? And how our algorithm works on the simulator might be built for one way versus another. So there's a little bit of that gray area that exists.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like how with the blitz, if you put them into roto grinders, you get a different result than you do if you put them into unabated. Like we do simulations differently. I hope that answers the questions there. And my question to you, Chris, is which game do you want to hit next?
Let's look at Maryland. Let's go to quarterback. We got two teams left. Maryland, Billy Edwards, your more traditional, like coming into the season runner. He's seemingly chucking it a bunch. Not the best. It looks like it's just available on Underdog. This is one I would keep an eye on. Oregon's a top 20 defense easily. They got beat up a little. Oh, there we go. We got some other options there for you. Yeah. So, like, you know, if they got beat up a little bit by Ohio State, but Maryland is not Ohio State. So I think this under 240.5, 238.5 in some of these areas spots. Very nice under. He has Ty Felton's a good receiver, but this could be an ugly game. Oregon could shut them down completely. And if you wanted some action, 7 p.m. slate, 4 p.m. your time, Tom, I think Billy Edwards against a really good Oregon defense is a good way to go about it.
Maryland is not Ohio State. Groundbreaking analysis here.
That's why you watch Cover 2.
Yeah,
that's why you watch Cover 2. Here. Last one. Right. We'll go with Georgia. Last one here. We'll stick with pass yards. This is probably going to bite me at some point. This is my favorite bet of the last month. Has been Carson Beck over passing yards. They throw it so much. The funny thing is he has played awful. He has 3 interceptions in like 2 of his last 3 games, I think. But he still throws it so much that 260.5 is just too low. You know, we have him, I think, somewhere around 55, 56% passing. You could probably justify 60% passing. This Ole Miss game could get crazy. This could be 42-40 type. And there is the added part of of ATN being banged up. If ATN doesn't play, there's no way they go heavy ground game with the true freshman Nate Frazier. Yeah. And then they also have Cash Jones. Like their running back room is, if ATN doesn't play, it's quite possible 3 of their top 4 running backs are hurt for the game. There's no way they're going to go run heavy or 50-50 run split with that type of situation. So Georgia has been throwing it a bunch. I like the over here a good bit. This is like a really strong 9-10% for me. I just like it. He has a lot of different options to throw to. And I will say if ATN doesn't play, he does miss a good option out of the backfield, but not one I would worry about. The most shocking thing about the whole thing of this is go to rushing yards. Why is there an ATN rushing yard number that's out? Usually these places don't give you a rushing number for a guy that's banged up. There was a rib injury against Florida. They basically said, like, we were hoping, can't remember the exact injury they were trying to avoid. They said, well, luckily it wasn't this. He could have missed their whole regular season if it was this type of injury. Now he's questionable week to week. I know it's Ole Miss and on the road, this is a tight ball game, but like rib injury has to be one of the worst ones for a guy that's trying to play through pain as a running back, right?
Yeah, that's not fun. As someone who has had rib injuries and tried snowboarding, it's not a great time.
Dude, he's going to get tackled 15 to 20 times. Like how does that make sense? So I like the under on ATN. We haven't projected to basically like what he would get if he was healthy. Maybe a couple percentage points conservative, but we still like it almost a 22% edge. You have the potential that he doesn't even play. You have the potential that he gets re-injured. This is like, if you're ever trying to bet something that could be that you might get, you know, your lucky stars hit, right? And you get an under because of an injury. This is like the one this weekend, because I am shocked that they have a line out here for him, because re-injury is so possible. He could play one series and shut it down. He could just be ineffective. There's a lot of routes to this under, and 75.5 is not a bad, like, it's not like a low number. It's not like it's 45.5. It's 75. That's a big number.
Not to mention the fact that, like, how bad is Ole Miss? How good are they this year?
They're top 25 in terms of defense. We could take a quick look. They're not like the Ole Miss of old that you could just do whatever you want on them. I'm fairly positive. They are second in the country in yards allowed per game on the ground, 2.28 yards per carry. That's best in the country. So, I mean, if you want to look at some of the matchups they've had in the past, South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, Arkansas have all gone for 3.5 yards per carry or worse. Mm-hmm. And then in the 5 games before that, against bad teams, it was in the 1 yard per carry or worse. Yeah. So the matchup isn't even in favor of ATN. So count me in. Mm-hmm. I'm shocked that they even have this line. It just doesn't make sense from like a book safety standpoint. Like you're putting a line out there for a guy that's maybe 50-50.
I'm just mad that it won't let me parlay it with the Carson Beck over.
I
tried to do that just now.
They do things like that. Yeah. So
Mets. Mets is out there saying MGM is like the third dragon in the meme who's not like the others. All right, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna correct him here. It's not 3 different dragons. It's all one dragon with 3 heads. Come on.
You and this video game sci-fi stuff, man, I got no shot keeping up with you.
This is because here's the thing: the meme isn't 3 dragons.
It's one dragon with 3 heads. I know what you're talking about, right? I got it. Now I got it. Yeah. It took me a second.
So there you go. There you go. You learned. Ole Miss defense is pretty good. At least their front 7 is. But thoughts on Haynes King? Do you think he's going to play or not? Brett Pagney cares deeply about this. He's put it in twice now.
I think he plays. I think I saw something news-based that was saying that leaning towards in. They also said there was a lot of jumping to conclusions yesterday. He's named a captain of the game. Ooh. So everybody was like, oh, if he's a captain, he's got to play. But Ben from our team, I was actually talking with him, going through some edges and stuff like that yesterday. And he was like, dude, the amount of times I've been burned on a guy being a captain and then not playing, a ton. So, until we hear it officially, until you see it on the Unabated news feed, I would just wait. I will say everything points to him playing. The captain is a decent start. There was some positive news, I believe, today that was continues that positivity. And then the Singleton and Rutherford line, the receiver lines for Georgia Tech, they're too high for me to not have him playing. Like if the backup was playing, I can't imagine those lines being where they were. So everything is pointing towards him playing, but we won't know until 1 minute into the game.
All right. Well, Chris, do we have any other players that we want to go to, or have we wrapped it up here in what I would say is perfect time?
I think we've wrapped it up here. Hopefully get some good games tonight. I'm looking forward to this Memphis Rice game, which is weird. Also, I've talked so much about Brendan Sullivan overs that I will be. You'll know what I'm doing at 9 p.m. Eastern. I will be locked in on Iowa UCLA. So appreciate the questions and the comments for sure to help kind of get us here to this Derek Carty show here at 3 p.m.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go and bet some of those Brendan Sullivan ones before we get out of here too. But thank you so much to everybody for watching and being with us as always. We always appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that follow button and stick around, because in just a few minutes here, we're going to be going live at the top of the hour. Derek Carty on to talk Week 10 NFL player props on the Blitz. Going to be another fun one as always. He had a dynamite Thursday night, I believe 5-0,
nice.
5-0 plus 6 units.
That's a fun game. That was a great game. That's one that's great for props, great for entertainment.
Yeah, I'm mad. I was busy losing a soccer championship, but so I missed that amazing comeback. But man, Lamar Jackson is half of the reason I want to have kids, because I want to one day be able to go and do my best Lamar Jackson impression while playing football with them and their friends.
I was thinking you were going to go down the route of like maybe my kid could become the next Lamar Jackson. But
there's a 0% chance.
Zero shot. Me too. You're not alone. But you nailed that. Yeah, that would be pretty fun to do. But he's incredible. The whole Derrick Henry, incredible. What an offensive group they have with Todd Monken, former Georgia coach.
Todd Monken and putting Todd Monken in charge of that offense with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson is just absolutely absurd. My kids have no shot. The only hope they have is that I meet Asia Wilson at a bar out here one night. That's the only hope they've got going for them. I
would love that for you. That would be great.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us here on the show today. Thank you guys again so much. And of course, be sure to stick around. We will be heading live in just a few minutes here at the top of the hour with Derek Carty to talk NFL. And then after that, if you are an Unabated NBA member, set the screen coming up at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern time to get you through and ready for another Friday night in the association as well. But for now, for Chris and Tom, that's going to do it. We'll see you guys next week. Best of luck as always. Thanks for watching Cover 2, and let's cash some tickets. See you next week, everybody.